Yeah, I'll save. Yeah.
Let's call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Kalmetzger?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. LaSalle?
Here.
Mr. Mahoney?
Here.
Ms. Schatzma? Here.
Okay, do we have a chance to look over the minutes, approval of the minutes of April 16th?
I move we approve the minutes of April 16th.
I second that motion.
You hear the motion on the floor to approve the minutes and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Chairman report. Well, I don't have anything, so I'm not the chairman, so. I'm sitting in for Blair. Okay. Public comments?
Ladies,
And if you have any comments, come to the microphone up here.
would any of you ladies like to place a comment on the public record?
We just got here, sorry.
So this is, are you here for Tharp Court?
Yes.
Okay. So typically what we'll do is we'll offer public comments. We've typically been pretty informal though. We could probably do the staff report and then if there's more comments that we need, we can take them then. So you're off the hook for now if you're okay with that.
Well, the first agenda items are going to give the formal report from the consultant. And
Yes.
then after that, what we'll do is give you a few minutes. If you have any comments, give you an opportunity to enter them for the record. Okay?
You're not quite warmed up yet? Okay.
Okay, number 4, agenda analysis.
I don't have anything to add or subtract, so we should.
I guess
Anything to add or subtract?
I kind of jumped ahead of myself here. New business, discussion items, Glen Oaks.
So I'm going to let Martin talk through this one and introduce his guest. And
Okay. Martin Montalvo, Operations Manager, City of Oregon City. I think it was 2 months ago, we had the residents of Tharp Court come and bring an issue to the Transportation Advisory Committee asking for assistance in regards to a few issues that were occurring at the intersection of Glen Oak and Tharp Court. First of these was pedestrian crossing. There was a concern in terms of the number of pedestrians there, and they were asking for an analysis to basically determine if it warranted a pedestrian crossing at the intersection. Second of these was some sightline issues with the on-street parking that was allocated in there. And then the third of these was a request for a no outlet or dead-end sign leading into the cul-de-sac that is Tharp Court. So based on their request and looking at just all of the issues that have been occurring at this area, because there's been a relatively large amount of development there in the last few years, the department felt it was warranted to bring in an independent traffic engineer to give us their expert analysis. And so we brought on John Replinger, who's a professional engineer focusing on traffic engineering, to give us an opinion based on addressing all 3 of these questions and taking into consideration development that's occurred in the area, some recent changes with the parking that was added in with the development orders, making sure it didn't violate any of the issues that were cited during the development order that require the on-street parking, and then also taking a look at the school and how that was affecting some of the pedestrian issues out there. So with that, I'm going to introduce John Replinger. And John, if you can give us a little background on yourself and then present your report.
Good evening. Yes, my name is John Replinger, and I have been doing work for the City of Oregon City for about 15 years, principally doing the traffic engineering work for the current planning activities. The city requires, when development occurs, that a traffic study be performed, and I serve as city staff in reviewing those applications. I've regularly been before the Planning Commission at this very spot. I've likewise been before the City Commission on a number of occasions. This is my first time here. glad to answer any of the questions that have anything to do with the traffic engineering work that I have performed for the city over this time. Martin and John have kind of done the introduction about my task here, and it is not the first time that I've looked at something like this for the city. Looked at some possibility of a marked crosswalk just over here near the Singer Hill Cafe a few years ago. I don't know if that ever came before this body, but in any case, it is something that I've done in the past. So as Martin said, there were a couple issues that were brought up. First was the idea of a marked pedestrian crosswalk. As I stated in my report, there is actually a crosswalk at every intersection unless it is posted and designated as not a crosswalk. So there is a pedestrian crossing there. The rights and responsibilities of motorists and pedestrians are the same whether or not there's a marked crosswalk or not. In terms of analyzing that, we did commission a independent traffic counting firm to place cameras. They observed the intersection for a total of 6.5 hours on one day, identified the highest hour in the morning peak and the highest in the afternoon. The highest hours of pedestrian or highest hours of vehicular traffic corresponded exactly with the activities of the high school. So unlike some other locations in town, the busiest time in the afternoon was in the range of 3 o'clock rather than the more typical 5:30 to 6:30 time period. We got the information about the traffic volumes and the pedestrian volumes, which were summarized in the report. They were probably not unlike I would expect to see on an average day, and I guess I was surprised that the pedestrian volumes were quite so low. I didn't expect them to be quite that low, but I didn't expect them to be too much higher. And as you see from my report, I recommended against marking having a marked pedestrian crossing at that location. The traffic volumes are pretty modest. The pedestrian volumes are quite low. The speeds are low. They're at least modest with relatively little speeding. And as I identified in my report, the primary, probably the best source of safety analysis that has been performed was a study that showed the presence of a marked pedestrian crossing, at least on a 2-lane facility, does not have a marked increase in pedestrian safety. So all of those factors combine to my recommendation that a marked crosswalk not be established at that location. On the second issue, which is that relating to sight distance, again, I made some observations being there during the day, and it is fairly common, as I expressed in my report, that when people see a limited sight distance, they tend to creep out further to automatically achieve greater sight distance when there are parked cars and other obstructions. But I think we can do better than that, and my suggestion was to mark a portion of the northeast and the southwest quadrants of the intersection for no parking for a distance of about 50 feet from the curb return. I think that does markedly improve people's sight distance, allowing those entering Glen Oak Road from Tharp Court and entering from the Coast Redwood on the opposite side to have a better view of the traffic coming at them from their left. The left is the more critical location because of the oncoming traffic being in the nearer lane. So again, that's my recommendation, a modest amount of probably a couple parking spaces being designated, for no parking for a distance of about 50 feet. So that's the summary of my report, my analysis, and be glad to answer any questions you have about those topics.
John Anderson here. Did you have a recommendation on the speed as well? Maybe mention that.
Yeah, one of the things that I also did was had a speed survey conducted, and though it may seem a little bit counterintuitive, the first of all, the authority for setting the posted speed falls to the Oregon Department of Transportation. It is not a city responsibility or city authority. The speed that is typically chosen is that which is called the 85th percentile speed. That is the speed at which 85% of people are going that speed or below. I guess we anticipate, the other way of saying it is we expect that maybe 15% of people are going to speed. People go speeds at which they are comfortable. In any case, I did, while we were out there having the study done of vehicular volumes and pedestrian volumes, had a 24-hour speed survey conducted, and in fact the 85th percentile speed was just a shade over 30 miles an hour, which indicates to me that even if a formal speed study with more sampling, a longer duration were performed, it's probably going to indicate that a 35 mile per hour limit is the appropriate speed that would be formally endorsed, established by the Oregon Department of Transportation. So I think it reflects that people are driving a speed that they're comfortable with. It's not a really high speed. I think all of us would like to have lower speeds on a lot of streets, but at least we'd like to have lower speeds on streets that we live on, but we like to be able to drive past to get to our destinations more quickly. So this is kind of the compromise. At any rate, 35 mile per hour posted speed is appropriate. There's not a lot of violation. When I used to be a county traffic engineer, I'd do a speed study, and when I found a lot of violators, I'd call the sheriff, and they do speed enforcement. I didn't observe anything from the records that suggest that there's a real enforcement problem, not a real speed problem. It's pretty good just as it is. So,
question.
Sir.
Given that this is, would you say this is a school zone? Given that
No, it is not a school zone. You have a school zone, or you have a school zone down at High School Lane, High School Drive, that's about, 800 feet further west. And that does have a marked crosswalk, and it has a school, short section with a school speed zone.
I know every time I go by a school, I'm told to slow down to 20 or something like that. So this doesn't apply.
This does not apply. And in fact, school zones are not as often recommended near high schools as they are, say, near elementary schools. But there's a whole procedure of establishing a school zone, and no, it does not apply. It is not. The school zones are almost always adjacent to the school facility, or in the case of High School Drive, you have a crosswalk, and that's a kind of an exception.
How far back is the 50 feet, you say?
I suggest
Where does it start?
Okay,
You know,
at the curb return, which is where the curb transitions from the curve part to the straight part.
Okay.
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
Is there any reason why you didn't recommend no parking on both sides? Because when I went out there and I tried to creep out of Tharp Court, and as I was looking to my right, I had to creep out quite a ways, and even if you have a clear view to your left, you'd still have to creep out there quite a ways to make sure you were clear to your right. And I think that would only lose 2 or 3 parking spots on those.
I mean, that's optional, and I guess I would say that the angles are different because the traffic coming from the right. So as you're on Tharp Court, you're going north, and a vehicle going west on Glen Oak Road is going to be visible at a greater distance merely because of the angle and because it is traveling on a lane that is farther away from you. So,
Personally, I would prefer that the no parking be on both sides, because what I can envision is you're creeping out there to try to turn left, and you have to get out there quite a ways, be sure that your right-hand traffic is not bearing down on you. By the time you got out there, there could have been additional cars at 35 miles an hour coming toward you also from the left. So I just feel, I would feel a better comfort safety margin.
you're quite, you can certainly make your recommendation to Martin and John about that. I would have no objection. I guess I was trying to use a balance that tries to save as much on-street parking as possible, minimizing the impact that way. Also, the other factor that I mentioned in my memorandum is that the presence of on-street parking is generally thought to provide for a more pedestrian-friendly environment. It helps to create more buffers between people walking on the sidewalk and the faster vehicular traffic. Also, the presence of cars out there does tend to make motorists slow down a little bit because of the possibility of parking maneuvers. So I would have no objection if you wanted to suggest 50 feet in each quadrant. That's entirely reasonable.
Well, I have to admit that since I got rid of my Expedition and driving a smaller car now, safety is a little more important to me than it was before.
But my opinion, if you get rid of too much parking on those streets, they're going to go down this street here we're trying to protect and park and use up those parking spots.
I mean,
And there's not many there.
yeah, and of course, the only thing I have to go on was short-term observations. It wasn't necessary for me to spend a week out there. And what I observed was that there was not much parking being done in the north. Let's see, in the north, there was less parking in the northwest quadrant, and I didn't observe any in the southeast quadrant. But that's.
I guess when I went out there, I was unlucky because it was packed on both sides.
Well, maybe you were lucky.
Who
So,
knows?
yeah. That's a good question, Bob. Thank you.
Any more questions?
John, I have a question. So for the pedestrian counts that we got out there, the numbers were relatively low, and this is a snapshot when we go out and do one of these analyses. You're not seeing what the residents see on a day-to-day basis. So based on that, I had my own staff go out there and conduct a secondary pedestrian count. Our numbers were not much higher, but they were higher than what John pulled out that day. I think the peak that we got for the day was 17 pedestrians crossing at one intersection at one time. Or not one time, but within that observational period.
Here to the left.
What kind of numbers would we need in terms of pedestrian counts to warrant a striped crosswalk?
What he's seeing.
Well, there's not a specific number. It's a matter of balancing a whole series of different considerations. Part of it has to do with the volumes of pedestrians. Part of it has to do with the volume of motor vehicles. but also the age and type of pedestrians you have out there. I would choose a lower number. If I were to recommend a marked crosswalk, I would use a lower number of pedestrians if they were mostly grade schoolers, higher numbers if they're high schoolers or other adults. Probably use a lower number if it were near assisted living facility or where there were lots of, wheelchair users or less rapidly moving folks. I don't think that, and also it depends upon the duration and number of time periods when they have high numbers. Also the presence of, say, a bus stop, which required a lot of activity. So I would say that probably the numbers in the range of 40 at the low end to 100, somewhere in that range would be the kind of value that I would expect before I would be inclined to recommend a marked crossing. And whether we're looking at the observations that were conducted, that we had from the traffic counting firm, or whether John's staff, we're nowhere near even the bottom level of that.
And then the last question I have is, based on your experience, I know that the study you cited within the report doesn't speak to this, but anecdotally, it's been my observation that at some intersections when you have striped crosswalks, it tends to give people a false sense of security. Assuming that I'm walking in here, I have the perceived right-of-way and I can walk through here without paying as close attention as you would at an unstriped intersection. Anecdotally, have you seen instances like that, or you have any evidence that kind of corroborates that? Or
Again, there's a lot of anecdotal evidence suggesting things like that. I've been to presentations at the Transportation Research Board or Institute of Transportation Engineers meetings where they've talked about various things that have been attempted in different communities. One of the most fascinating that I saw was where they put a basket. They attached a metal basket to the street stand or a street sign or a lamppost, and put flags in it so that a pedestrian could get a flag, wave it as they went out across, and deposit it in the basket on the other side. The one I personally like is pushing a shopping cart. I push shopping carts from wherever I park at the grocery store to the store. I find that gives me a lot more respect on the part of motorists who are speeding out of the store to get their pizza back home or whatever it is they've got. So it's incumbent upon all of us to be observant and careful. I think Martin brings up a good point. We do need to be a little bit cautious about giving people a unwarranted sense of security. There's a lot of activity going on in pedestrian crossing safety stuff, and we're certainly aware that something over a third of the fatalities in the related to traffic are pedestrians being struck. So we take this very seriously.
Yes, just a couple things. On this map, which I'm assuming you have on your screen, so that's about 50 feet right there from the curb return. So where the curb return turns to a straight tangent, there's about 50 feet. Pretty big. I mean, I think 50 feet significant because, and especially if we did it on both sides. Because these issues come up from time to time, and I think Tharp Court's a little bit different than the street across from it. I forget the name of the street across from it. John, do you remember?
Coast Redwood.
Coast Redwood. Mostly because of the uphill gradient on Tharp Court as you come up to the stop sign. But I just, what I'm a little concerned about is, a similar request coming before this body of neighbors across the street that would like to see the same thing happen, and you know, boy, they really need their on-street parking on that side. This side, I guess I would say to a lesser extent. My guess is whoever's using the parking on this side of the street is people across the street from them. So on-street parking, I would say, yeah, you can afford to lose a few spots, but you know, you need to be careful about that too. The other thing that I wanted to say was we do have street trees. This first street tree right here, for instance, hopefully the property owner is maintaining that, limbing those up, but we all know what happens over time. Lots of times they don't get limbed up. And so pretty soon that street tree becomes a sight distance barrier as well. So part of me was thinking, well, it may be somewhere short of that 50 feet, maybe more like 35 feet might make more sense to put it more along the lines of that. And on this side, it seems to me something maybe, 20 or, that first parking stall is really what you'd like to prevent, I think. The other thing that I would say would be if you're a vehicle driver coming out of Tharp Court, while this seems, we see it in other intersections too, it's not just Tharp Court. You'll probably remember Partlow Road is one where we've got this stop bar back here, which is appropriately placed behind the crosswalk. You stop there as a vehicle, you look, right? Look for pedestrians first, and you look and you eke out a little bit further. This is a bike lane right here. In theory, that bicyclist should be moving with the direction of traffic. Look for a bike, right? So you're looking. You should be looking to the west here as a driver, and you continue to move out here. And the reason why I think John didn't recommend here was because your first point of direction should be to the west as you're coming out of that, and then as you see that looks clear, you continue to move out, and you've got plenty of sight distance to see to the east. And that's we can't continue to reduce on-street parking in every one of these situations. So I think it would be good from this body to help make some recommendations or not make recommendations, but part of our, I think, decision should be, what do you think is reasonable with regard to that? 50 feet is a fair amount, right? Mm-hmm. The other side, it's debatable. 50 feet on the other side would pretty much prohibit parking here, with the exception of maybe one stall.
Well, the other aspect is that you can do things incrementally, and you can see what difference 50 feet made, and you could also observe how that impacted the parking.
But it is something we could do.
Yes.
I mean, it would apply. It would be in response to the people that brought this to us.
Is that painting the curb or putting a sign up?
Well, I might leave that up to Martin, but I can tell you my theory on that, because I haven't shared it with Martin yet. But painting curb is time consuming, and usually we send a seasonal out there and paint, and it's kind of a mess sometimes. So we usually post a couple of signs.
And we've had very good results in the past with starting with just simply signage, a little bit of enforcement with our partners over at the PD, more warnings than actual tickets. And then if that doesn't address the issues, then we'll go out and take that additional step. Just to kind of reiterate some of the recommendations that John has gone through and some of the things that I'm prepared to have my staff start working on next week, is we've already ordered all of the signage for the no parking that's been recommended within John's report, and we're going to implement that incrementally. If it seems like we can sacrifice a few more parking spots for the sake of safety, we will. But I'm going to start at the base with what John's recommended. The crosswalk was not recommended, so we're not going to be moving on that item. We are going to be moving the no outlet / dead end. We've confirmed against the MUTCD, which is the federal standards for roads. Everything we do basically has to comply with that. A no outlet sign would not be appropriate at this application, so we will be putting out a dead end sign. That's the appropriate nomenclature for what's occurring here. So we've got that all purchased and ready for deployment. We haven't issued the work orders, just I wanted to get a chance to let the residents speak, make sure this is something that they can all live with. If there's any additional measures, then I'll work that all into one work order and do the work in a day rather than piecemeal it with sending troops out there after several events. And then the other item was some speed issues. So we've contacted our partners over at the PD, and we're on the schedule for their mobile radar deployment trailer. I still do not have a definitive date. We were 6th on the list when we put the request in, and I think they're only at number 3 right now. They usually leave them out for several weeks before they start rotating them around. So I sent an email today to the PD to find out where we stood, and I did not get a reply. But I will follow up on that and try and have that deployment completed within the next few weeks.
What do you need from us? A motion, a consensus?
Yeah.
Well, right now, I think what I'd be most interested is to hear from the residents and see what they think, and then from there, this is really an informational item for you guys.
I think it said make a decision.
Is it? Yeah, it was a decision. So
Yeah.
to either accept the report or not.
I have one thing about the county striping. You know
Okay.
how the stripes are. Like this one, it's on this side is way out there.
Mhm.
Could you have when they repaint further back? Could it be done?
I'm not
Maybe-
sure what you're
We
saying.
need to break that one in the intersection.
Like here, start
It's
painting
done
this
wrong.
way, so it looks like more like an intersection.
Okay.
And then this bike lane,
hmm
I think should be, try to make it look more like an intersection. So
We can take that into advisement. We typically don't go out right now to modify that. It's a pretty lengthy process. I have to basically hydroblast it out of
Well,
there.
can you just let it wear out and
Well,
just?
that's when it comes up, and for the next time for any paint deployment or thermoplasty that needs to go down there, we can take that into advisement. I'll put something in the file.
And
Just
not
kind
the
of.
bike lane.
Trying to make it. I'm trying to make it look like an intersection.
It's not striped correctly.
Okay.
From a person who knows.
Mark it out now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any more from? You want to open up to public comment,
Take care of it.
and they'll have to step forward to the mic.
Actually, apparently what they normally do is we take them and then the chair calls people up one at a time. So we take them all now. And whether you want to testify or not, I mean, you can change your mind. So I'm going to do this one first. And then just give it back to me. Thank you.
Herflot? Is that the name? Harl.
Oh, Sean.
Sean? Herloff? Maybe it's okay.
As you sit at the podium,
And
please
say-
state your name and address, please.
Or not at,
Or not
where you
address,
live.
yeah.
Where you live, Oregon City.
Kroloff, Dark Court. I appreciate the time that you guys have looked at this. I have a couple of concerns with the speed. I know that the range of the monitoring was only 24 hours, but myself and most of the neighbors that are here have lived there for coming on 4 years. And from the end of the school zone to our development, people ramp up their speed going up that hill. And I mean, if you sit in that at the intersection and you look down, it almost peaks at the top. So people ramp up, and I mean, I don't know if it was ever really discussed of putting speed bumps in, but speed bumps on either side. I know it's not a crosswalk, but I don't think necessarily a crosswalk would benefit this, but a speed bump on either side. Because, and I don't know how far out you want to put it or if it can even be done, but that's something that could be looked at. and then the stop sign on, I don't know, like right here, if it could be moved up forward, more forward.
It has to be at the sidewalk level.
Well, I'm saying right, I mean, within the same plant, like kind of grass area, up just at the corner, past, there's a fire hydrant, and then right before the fire hydrant is the stop sign. If you move it up towards the street a little bit more with that no outlet sign, then I think people would be able to see that a little better. Because we have people come in there and think, okay, it trails into the development behind us.
Joe?
Not understanding what, say
He wants to move the stop sign closer to the sidewalk, I guess.
So, in that, I mean, I don't know how to size this up a little bit larger.
But in the planter strip
so
there?
in that strip is the sign. Well, there's a fire hydrant.
Just back up, Kathy.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you got to come back the other way.
Stop.
Okay, so the fire hydrant is further out. If you put the stop sign up closer to the road, putting that new sign on top of the
Oh, the no outlet.
then it will
Or the
help
dead end.
because people come in there, they pull in there fairly quickly, and then get to the end. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Now,
Oh,
let
there's
me
fi-
just clarify. Are you talking about where we place the dead end sign, or where the placement of the existing stop
The
sign
existence of the current sign,
is? Okay.
moving it forward.
We
towards
can
the
look
street.
into that. My concern is that water hydrant's telling me that there's a significant water line going through there, which may be the indication as to why the stop sign was put a little further south. Because we have to be very careful with utility conflicts, what's
I
lying
understand.
underground.
I mean,
So
there's-
that just, I can investigate that, but top of my head, I think that's probably why it's.
Okay. The red lines or saying there's no parking on both sides at a minimum of 50 feet, I think is the best case scenario. With, I mean, I don't need to draw it anymore, but the opposite side street, they have, that's fine where it is. So these renters, leasers, however you want to say it, they have 2 car garages. So saying that there is not taking away 50 feet, it's not taking away parking from them per se. I mean, they're fairly large housing, and to take away 50 feet on each corner. On our side, we don't have a whole lot of parking here, but I believe the rest of my neighbors in the development would agree that safety of taking the 50 feet here, 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 and here is going to give everybody a safer neighborhood.
Just to clarify, because what John's recommendation is, the southwest corner is 50 feet there, as
Right
well
here.
as the northeast corner,
Right.
50 feet there. So that's initially what we'll look at our initial deployment, and then I'll reevaluate, how that's improving with the sightline issues, and then if we need to take further action, I'm not opposed to it. But
I mean, I feel strongly being a parent and knowing, there was just a T-boning accident, Saturday? Saturday, in this very intersection, because somebody couldn't see and was going too fast and hit somebody. I mean, I don't know how many more there's going to be. And we've, myself, my wife, many of my neighbors have almost been hit trying to go across or, from either direction. To me, that's a safety issue, and my son's 9 months old. Now, if somebody T-bones my wife or myself and my son's in the car and my son happens to be killed, that's a potential issue that we've all addressed. And I'm not the only parent that lives in that cul-de-sac. To me, that's the most important thing of my child's safety. So
with that 50 feet sight distance there we're referring to, that would help, would it?
Right.
And that no outlet
Dead end.
that would help.
Yeah.
is there a way that we can get it changed to a no outlet? Because I know.
Well, the thing is, you guys requested a no outlet, and we investigated against I can never remember the full name for it. All I know is MUTCD. It's
Manual and Uniform Traffic Control.
There you go. It's basically the Federal Highway Administration standards for everything we do, striping, signage. The standard does not meet for no outlet sign, and I have to try and apply that as much as possible. And everything that we're doing here is trying to apply standards, because we get requests daily for everything, and we just can't address everything that comes through, so we have to set some sort of benchmark. And these standards really are what we use to guide our actions. So the standard for that is a dead end sign. A no outlet sign would be you have a one way into a neighborhood, you have a couple connector roads in there, but there's no other way out. It's just that same way you came in. So that's the indication for what something would be a no outlet. You had some sort of interior traffic, but you had to come out the same way you came in. What you guys have is a dead end. I can do it as a rider that just goes across the top by the street. They're about the same size as the street name signs. Or I can do it as a full-blown dead-end sign. For visibility, I'm going to do a full-blown dead-end sign unless there's any opposition.
That would have the same impact, though, wouldn't it, Martin?
It's the exact same, to the common person, lay person, it means the exact same thing.
What do you think, Sean?
It's just I have to be careful that I'm going to follow the MUTCD.
How do you feel?
Actually, we're the decision-making authority on these. I mean, these are minor differences. We're trying to prevent traffic from turning in and out of Tharp Court.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll do it the right way, and we'll do it the way that is appropriate based on our signing standards. So,
And I don't know if it will ever get talked about in the future, but the speed bumps.
Speed bump. We do have a speed bump policy in the city. An arterial street like Glen Oak Road doesn't qualify for speed bumps because
there's already speed bumps on it.
because there's my recollection of the speed bumps there are you talking the little cones?
No, there is a full-blown speed bump right down here.
High School Lane?
So right there. Right here. This is the speed bump.
Yeah.
It's a crosswalk speed bump.
And I believe that was a condition of the school development, and so that's been long-standing. But right now, and I don't know if the date of our speed bump policy is after the high school development, but that was done. Betty, you remember how long ago we did that?
I don't remember.
It's
but I know
probably
we did
been
it
5 or 6 years.
At least.
So it won't. Arterials, actually collectors as well. Speed bumps are not allowable in the city of Oregon City.
And it has to have 85th percentile speeds of under 30 miles per hour. And it can't be a fire route or an emergency vehicle route. There's a bunch of criteria.
Yeah, that policy is actually online and available for if you guys want to look at that. But Kathy just brought up the 2011 speed study that we do speed studies every couple of years, and to kind of just go back to that speeding issue. I mean, every resident has stories about speeding traffic. That's one of our biggest complaints that we get in these meetings, and the traffic, the speeds that they were documenting is the highs were 37 to 38, 39 miles an hour. So it's posted 35, right?
Yeah, and that's consistent with the findings that John Replinger got with our traffic counting firm that came in and did the traffic counts.
And there were 4 24-hour counts, and the 85th percentile speeds were, 36 to 39.
But we know speeders, we know speeders happen. And
Front of my place is 25, and I know a policeman that got one for 45, but he just happened to be in the right place at the right time to catch him.
we have other people to testify, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Start date? I guess that's right. State your name and what city you're from.
My name's Erica Stardig. I'm from Oregon City on Tharp Court. My first statement is that I'm very strongly for still wanting a crosswalk at our intersection. I thank you for the research that you've done and the time that you've put into this, but I am very disappointed in the decision as it stands right now. I have a number of things I'd like to say. I know we'll try to be quick in efforts to appease the time limit. In regards to the study, I'm not sure where the traffic counting was done, but for the strip line that we saw that was placed for the 24 hours, it was on the wrong side of the intersection where all the traffic goes. So I wouldn't be surprised that that number would be lower than what you were anticipating, because everybody coming out of our street either takes a left towards 213 down Glen Oak, not a right because there's no light there, and everybody gets stuck waiting on Beaver Creek Road when traffic builds up there. So everybody goes to the light, or they go across up to the high school street and take out at the light there out onto Beaver Creek Road. Same with the exiting traffic off of Coast Redwood. They exit towards Highway 213 as well. So the strip having been placed to the right of us on Glen Oak actually would not capture the information correctly that we're relaying to you. The second information that I would like to share is the fact that, the assumed crosswalk. I mean, that's the reason why we came to you in the first place. Obviously, that's not happening. We all know that that is a rule. It's not being followed. And, we wouldn't be here if that is the case. If everybody assumed that there was a crosswalk, then my neighbor wouldn't have to stand at the corner to walk her dog across the street. I wouldn't have to be waiting even at the crosswalk that does exist down the road, waiting for traffic to go by because they don't stop. I feel that, I appreciate the work, but I feel that the report that was given is quite a biased opinion, given the contract relations and the employment history. I mean, obviously, it's not a non-biased, influential decision. The speed, I think the speed limit is actually okay if people will actually follow it. Our neighbor is also a police officer, and he comes through and patrols. We know that's not a problem, at least for the patrolling. There are the offenders that come through and spin cookies in our intersection and peel out at hours of the night and throughout the day. We're not going to catch everybody. We understand that, and nor is everybody going to abide by the posted speed limit. But that's not addressing the problem that we're bringing to your attention. 150 feet down the road on Glen Oak, you have a reduced speed limit, and you tell me we can't. And you have a crosswalk, and you tell me we can't. And you have speed bumps, and you tell me that we can't. We are closer in direct feet, if you measure from that high school to our intersection, than 150 feet down the road, but that's okay because it was previously negotiated and our safety doesn't matter, but there's this. And that's what I feel that you're sitting here to tell me tonight. just this weekend there was an accident, and all this woman was doing is trying to pull out to see, and she got nailed. We've, as a community, has brought this to your attention, and I want to know who's going to be accountable when I pull my stroller out instead of a cart, and I step in front of that car to cross the street because the car should be slowing down, and me and my daughter get hit. This is not something of just wanting a reduced speed limit. This is not that we already haven't had our lives put at risk trying to just get out of our own street. I've been almost hit a number of times, and I'm tired of it, and I'm here to beg for you guys to put in some simple restrictions to help our safety and the children across the way. And if children are what's needed, why don't you do a census count? There are elderly people in our community. There are children in the community. And the last census that I know of was done in 2012. And since then, this whole community has been built up. There are children on bikes running their scooters across the road all hours of the day when the weather is nice. And they are just as liable to cross that road or step out in front of one of those cars. And since both of those intersections are coming up a hill, the oncoming cars will not see that child until that is too late. You know, children are below the height of a trunk or the front of a vehicle. And so by the time they're out there in that traffic, when they're visible, and that's too late. We can't be sparing lives just because we can allow a crosswalk 150 feet down the road, but our intersection doesn't qualify. I really would like the answer to know, when I get hit, if my daughter gets harmed, is 6 children on our street not enough that will need to cross that road? How do we go to the park? How do we go to the school? We will cross that road. How do I get anywhere? How do I go to the grocery store? How do I go to the community college? I cross that road. And so will every one of those children. The last point I'd like to make is that wasn't addressed today is in regards to the fire hydrant. Again, the last 2 houses on this road have to have sprinklers in them because of the lack of fire access. How's the fire truck going to get down the road? You know, how are they going to get in and out with all that traffic parked on either side? They can't turn around. You know, should we not be, considering a fire lane or something? I don't know what the rules are with that. I'm grasping at straws here, but it's in the name of our neighborhood safety for the children. There is a park not too far away. There's a lot of foot traffic back and forth. People aren't crossing this road. You don't see the foot traffic right now because it's not safe. And it wouldn't be smart to do so as it stands. You cannot see. That's all I have.
Any comments?
Well, I guess I think I get the emotion about this, definitely, Eric. I see that. I think, though, first of all, the reason we hired a consultant to do this was to get an independent study and to make an accusation that somehow his professional opinion is biased because he's hired by us. That's unreasonable, I think. We're trying to do a good job of approaching this. I came to this meeting fully under the impression that the neighborhood was going to appreciate the effort and appreciate the professional recommendation. So we're making a professional recommendation here. We're making a professional recommendation to make some changes. I think the idea about children crossing Glen Oak Road without supervision, adult supervision, is a mistake. I wouldn't allow my child to do it. I wouldn't expect you to allow your child.
But when a ball crosses the road and a kid runs out, you know that happens.
So I'm responding to the idea of placing a crosswalk in that intersection. I see safety issues that John didn't raise, which is from the lower side, you don't see that crosswalk. Yet that crosswalk tells you as a pedestrian, you've got more safety measures in front of you or on the ground in front of you that you really don't have. So vehicles don't see that pedestrian crosswalk.
I understand that because they don't see the intersection, and that's what we're really trying to relay to you. I absolutely appreciate and I agree with that.
But it is an intersection, and pedestrians should use caution. adding a crosswalk there doesn't necessarily ensure that they're more safe.
I agree with that, but telling me that I would be an irresponsible parent to allow my child to cross that road is not an effective solution either. Just because I'm with my child with or without a crosswalk doesn't mean it's more safe. I understand that, but the fact is you cannot see that intersection when you come from 4 ways into that intersection. That would bring some sort of visibility as you're approaching, like the speed bump idea, something. I mean, we need to consider this.
Okay. I hear it. We just disagree.
I will have to agree to disagree with you.
Okay. But parking, restriction of parking, making better sight distance, visibility. I mean, if we can move the stop sign, if there isn't a water line conflict there, we can help with the no outlet signage. So, Commissioner, I think, I don't know if there's anything else that this board wants to comment on, but.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sharon? Name, city.
Lands, Tharp Court. I just wanted to say, first of all, I wasn't sure where the no outlet, whatever sign is going to be. You said it's going to be a big one, or is it going to be one that's on top of the stop sign pole with the street signs? Did we get an
I envisioned the
answer
one
that?
on top of the sign, but you said something a little
Yeah,
different.
We were gonna post out the full-blown diamond.
Okay, and where will that be?
That'll be
Will
on
that
the
before?
incoming lane, traffic lane. So
Okay,
as
that's
cars
what I-
are preparing to turn into Tharp Court, they will see it prior to coming
Yes.
into that full-blown intersection. So they
Well-
will have some time to renegotiate and enter back into the through lane to continue on Glen Oak.
So it won't sit on top of the stop sign?
No, we weren't going to do the rider.
Okay.
Okay.
No,
I
I was
didn't-
doing the
didn't get
full-blown.
that. I didn't get
That's
that.
what I was wondering, so we will have the big one on the
Mm-hmm.
opposite side, okay. Also, I was gonna say, on the discussion of whether it's gonna be 50 feet or, no
Mm-hmm.
parking, last week there was a big truck, construction truck with a lowboy on it.
Got your email. Yep.
And, well, no, this was a different one.
Okay.
That one also, 2 days after we had the meeting, a poor roofer came down our road, and apparently the driver was not as well educated as the passenger was, because the guy gets down there and he's like, oh no, what do I do now? Because he's got this roofing truck. So he gets out, and the passenger gets over in the driver's seat, and they jiggy-joggied back around for quite a while before they could actually get out. But, and I told Martin, I said, gee, a no outlet sign probably would have really been appreciated in that instance. But the on the parking on the main road there, to the left of Tharp Court, where that parking is on Glen Oak, the lowboy was there with a, I don't know, backhoe or something on it. It was so hard to get out of my street. When I got to the stop sign, I sat there and I went, now how am I going to do this? So I had to roll backwards, and I'm trying to look between the truck and the lowboy and the equipment that's on that just to see what's coming. And I go, okay, it's clear. So then I snuck my nose and my truck out again into the intersection. There was somebody coming the other way, which I had to wait for. But, I mean, you could not see a darn thing. So I'm thinking that probably since, there is still construction going on over there, I don't know why, if they were offloading, onloading, or what, but that is a really bad situation there, because you cannot see. So I'm hoping that you
So
all
you'd
approve
advocate for the 50 feet?
Oh, yes, definitely. And just one other thing, we had discussed about the school, about the kids and the garbage and the traffic that comes out of there. I did talk to Jenny, who is the principal secretary, about the problem of the garbage, and then she put Kathy Johnson on the phone. She's the associate principal, and they said that the National Honor Society, of all people, gets out there twice a week and does the pickup of all the garbage. And I said, well, shouldn't you put the detention kids on that? and she says, well, yes, they do, but only on nice days.
I resent that.
Well, did you spend a lot of time in detention? But the thing is, you know, get some raincoats for those kids. If they're in detention, let them get out there. Work in the rain. Why have them work on a sunny day, you know? And then I also told her about the accident that I had seen because the kids were hurrying. And I suggested that in the next assembly, maybe they could make, you know, some kind of announcement about picking up their garbage besides just cleaning out their vehicles out in the parking lot. And also that they would kind
Are
of
we
watch
talking on the
speed.
school or are we talking here?
This is over at High School Lane. Isn't it
it's
High School?
Myers Road.
Yeah, it's Myers.
Actually, is High School Lane the very last one down by the duck pond, I believe?
Yeah.
No, the accident that I saw actually happened on Coast Redwood and Myers on the corner.
So here?
No.
Oh, this is Coast Redwood.
Myers is up near
Way
the
up.
high school, Martin.
Way up. Right. Okay.
Yep. So here?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where the accident happened that I saw. So, you know, I did mention to her about that, and she said that she would try to get, you know, something said on that because the student council apparently addresses these issues quite frequently. So, you know, maybe that will help. But I did follow your advice, and I did call.
But you guys got to watch out. Senioritis is happening right now.
I know, I'm retired. I don't have anything
They
else
only
to
have,
do.
was it 5 days left?
Not
10
really.
days?
Okay. Any
Thank you.
questions?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Tim? Name and where you live?
My name is Timothy Nieto, and I live in Oregon City, in Tharp Court. So I've actually witnessed last Saturday an accident at the intersection there. We were having, the whole neighborhood is having a garage sale. So traffic, foot traffic and car traffic increased that weekend. And a lady in a black vehicle was on that Coast Redwood, trying to take. I guess she was either trying to turn left onto Glen Oak, and she creeped out and she kept creeping to see to her left, which is the I guess that would be what, west
To the east.
east.
Yep.
And she a Suburban came and anticipated her continue to move forward, so she tried to swerve and she ended up hitting the rear behind the back seat on the fenders. And so that's something that, you know, kind of gave me an alert saying, hey, you know, because every time I drive up there, especially on Tharp Court, the stop sign's so far back, and then you have the parking space plus the bike lane plus the houses that are sitting in the corner. I always have issues looking to my right, seeing traffic because the elevation increases with the cars. And I'm in an FJ Cruiser, so I kind of sit high and still have issues seeing. And I know that there was an issue with the crosswalk not being visible, but when I drive down Portland, they have the flashing light. You hit the button, and then it flashes, and then that's caused, you know, it gives attention saying, hey, somebody's about to cross here. Now with the kids playing, right here in the field here, they're putting apartment complexes, so that's going to increase the population in this area a lot greater. And then here on yesterday when it was sunny, there was a group of kids just playing in this corner, which I agree, you know, that's probably not a smart place for kids to play and let their, especially from the parents, but their front yard is right here on Glen Oak. They don't have a backyard. That's all pavement back there. That's where they enter their their garages. So I don't know if what these people are expected to do, maybe transport their kids to a park or inform them to go play maybe in the middle of of the development. I don't know. So when I've seen those kids play in the corner, I wanted to say something, but I mean, you know, how far can you go trying to inform somebody that's not bright? That's pretty much all my input that I had to say about it.
I know what it feels like to be T-boned.
Oh, yeah?
Right out here in this
Oh,
intersection.
jeez.
How about I was on a motorcycle?
Well, that's not good. Yes, I do.
And I was doing 12 miles an hour. A car came out this way and got me. But he didn't have any insurance and he was underage. And so.
Have any questions for me?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So, Steve, I just want to end this on a positive note, if we can. We do want to make several changes as a result of this report. We do think the report was telling in a lot of ways. It provided a lot of good information. It's consistent with our past traffic information that we've had. I think we need to monitor this parking situation. Maybe we do work on all four corners and take that as our first approach, and then go from there. I kind of wonder if on those two corners that the report suggested not signing right now, and maybe we go ahead and again split that difference and go with a 25-foot on that edge and just kind of see how that works. I'd also like to find out more about that accident. So I don't know if we can check with the police department.
Pull the police
on
report.
that. We can pull the police report on that and just find out that lots of times accidents happen for other reasons besides what we've been talking about, and so it'd be good to find out what that's about as well. So. The speed bump issue, unfortunately, you know, I don't have all the history in that, but it's not that speed bump policy is online. It's actually something that we refer people to all the time. It was something that was developed through this group right here, through a fair amount of discussion, and it had the support of. I mean, speed bumps slow fire response as well, and that's another kind of consideration that I think a lot of people don't think about, but. And I get, you know, it's young drivers, high school drivers. That's an area out there where we hear from even the school district kind of acknowledges that they've got a lot of young drivers. So I think
John, when you said back off to 25 feet, were you referring to the recommendation of 50 feet be reduced to 25?
No, 50 feet on the two corners that John recommended, and on the two corners that he said. Leave basically at this round we could add if we wanted to create 25-foot no parking
Oh,
zones
okay,
on
that's
those.
exactly what I was going to recommend.
Yeah, so as you're coming up on the intersection and you're queued on the right, you'll have 25 feet of clearance space for sight line, and then on the left you'll have 50 feet. So that should open up the sight line well enough where everybody should get a better view of what's coming up at the intersection.
Yeah.
John, did you say at one time that you were working with, or we were going to consider getting from the state the authority to adjust our own neighborhood speeds and things of that nature? Because it's set by the state right now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is set by the state. Now, there is a new law in the books that we have yet to kind of write policy on, which allows us to reduce neighborhood speeds. So it wouldn't be necessarily Glen Oak Road, but those streets that aren't posted. So it's the streets that are kind of internal to less than 25. So post them at 20 miles an hour. We've heard a fair amount of that request from the Kenema neighborhood. So that's probably be our first priority to when we start implementing speed limit signs in neighborhoods to look at that neighborhood.
Has any communication been between the neighborhood association and the city regarding this problem?
This one?
Yeah.
I don't believe so.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd try a motion here. I'd like to move that this advisory committee accept the consultant's report and add the two additional no parking areas so all four corners are covered.
I second.
Any second? There's a motion on the floor to 50 feet on the two intersections and 25 on the other sides. And any more discussion on that? Okay, call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
Scott.
Did you say you were opposed?
Yep.
Okay.
And I'd like to ask just one more question out there of Sharon. I really like this little statement you did. I like a definition because I'll put it in my own vocabulary. It was jiggy joggy. That is so cool.
Go ahead, you can use that.
Okay.
Martin, is there any way we can get that into the standards written? Jiggy joggy?
I'll propose
Commonly
that
used.
to at the next
Would you run that
APWA
by-
conference. We'll start
Would you run
there.
that by-
Once I can convince the engineers, then from
Is
there
that
it just moves to
copyrighted?
legislature.
Is that copyrighted? You got the copyright for that? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But I'll let you use it.
Thank you.
There is a standard for wiggle waggle, though.
Oh, okay.
Jiggy joggy is new.
Okay.
All right, just for the residents out of Tharp Court, just so you know, I've tried to get all this scheduled in for this week, but I've got some major work going on Malala. So you can look for implementation sometime latter part of next week. Okay?
I would almost make a comment too that once the no parking goes up, it's not as if code enforcement goes out there and patrols that road all the time. So if people are parking in the no parking area, please contact code enforcement and let them know. That way they can go out and write tickets, and then people will learn not to park there.
It will be a transition for the people who are accustomed to parking there. So, especially because what we're simply doing, we get pretty good returns on signage. The striping it's a lot more maintenance associated with it, and it's not a big return on the investment. So we'll start with that effort. So just kind of let everybody know, put the word out.
We get like those OA stickers that say no parking. We can just put them on their windows so they.
You don't want that liability.
You could form a Tharp Court ad hoc committee to request the city provide you with paint and paintbrushes, maybe.
Yeah. Your best bet is if you see somebody parking there, just go, man, if I were you, I wouldn't park there. The city has really been knocking out tickets there. They'll move. That's true. All right. Thank you for taking your time.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Any more comments on this? Let's move on. TSP mobile standards? Mobility standards, you say?
We don't have to spend a lot of time on this topic, but it is, as you may recall, the City Commission is reviewing the Transportation System Plan right now, the same plan that you folks have been looking at, and it's going through that legislative process. And since you all made the motion to recommend approval of the Transportation System Plan, an issue's come up with the state about mobility standards. And so I just want to go through that and try and explain a little bit about what mobility standards are in case you're tentatively watching City Commission meetings.
Why are you looking at me, John?
Well,
I've
so
already apologized.
I'll kind of do the same thing I did for the City Commission. So mobility standards are complicated, so I'm going to try and simplify them and make some broad brush generalities that just for the interest of time and my intent of how to present those. But basically, mobility standards are a measure of congestion. Typically, it's measured at intersections. Some of the new thought on mobility standards is we could look at corridors instead of just intersections. But right now, our standards are for intersections. It's the level of service as a mobility standard now in our transportation system plan. Volume over capacity, or V over C, that's the mobility standard that we're talking about. So the more, and I learned this from John, the more congestion you have, the more you're less likely to meet that standard. And I think what I heard was, typically if you have to sit through a signal to wait to get it to cycle more than twice, you're probably at an intersection that's failing. And So we have, in Oregon City, we have, now we've kind of narrowed it down to 3 locations, all of which are state facilities in the city, and all of which have very complicated, in fact, the amount of study work that's gone into it really hasn't even established what a fix would be for a couple of these intersections. So we're talking Beaver Creek Road and Highway 213, and we're talking Highway 213 and 205, and we're talking Highway 205 and 99E. So those 3 intersections currently, or real shortly here, aren't they don't meet the mobility standard that we currently have in place. So we're talking with the state and the metro, the region, the whole region's talking about these alternate mobility standards. And in order to get to an alternate mobility standard, they're asking the city to do a study. And so we're trying to adopt the TSP. We're trying to move that process along, but we also got to do this, add this other piece of work to our work program, which is to do an alternate mobility standard. And in the meantime, we're trying to come up with also code that would help address some of these things, so that if a developer comes in to the city, we have a way to hold that developer's feet to the fire with regard to whether or not we can require these improvements. Those 3 intersections that I talked to you about would have very expensive, there's very expensive solutions to get them to a point where they would actually pass our current mobility standard. For instance, Beaver Creek and 213, that has been in the past discussed about a grade elevated intersection. So, more flyover ramp kind of a scenario, or some kind of a clover leaf design, something that would be very expensive. At 205 and 213, they're not even really sure how quite to make that one work. And same thing with 99E and 205. I mean, they're talking long range. To really kind of make that work, you'd have to almost add a lane onto the bridge crossing over the Willamette on I-205. So very expensive projects. So at the last commission meeting, we talked about adding in a placeholder into our SDCs. Right now, our SDCs and our funded project list is based on our current transportation unit rate for system development charges, and it's also based on our projected growth. So projected growth times unit rate equals what we have in terms of funding for projects. And these 3 intersections that we're talking about aren't included in that list of funded projects, and aren't really even identified in those list of funded projects. So what we're talking about doing is trying to find a concept level estimate that's defendable. And what we talked about at the city commission meeting was, say, $100 million worth of projects those 3 intersections might entail. That's definitely a thumbnail estimate. But it was a good estimate for discussion. So $100 million, those kind of projects, first of all, they're not really even our facilities. A portion of Beaver Creek Road is city facility, but it's really a state intersection. So what level we contribute, what other agencies are contributing to those fixes is yet to be determined. So what's a good approach to dealing with that? And what we were recommending was that we look at those like we might look at, if we were to have a project at that level, we'd probably get a federally funded grant. And in order to participate in a federally funded grant program, we'd have to contribute 20%. The biggest grant program that's out there right now is what they call a Tiger. It's the 5th round of the Tiger grants, which are federal grants. And we looked at that pretty closely because we've still got the Redland Road 213 project that's a project that's planned. And anyway, that grant's a $10 million grant, plus you have to, the city has to add, and their match would be another 20%. So really we're talking about a $12 million project. And so even to play in some of these kind of projects, we'd have to bring 20% to the table. And so in our presentation of the City Commission, we were suggesting, because of these 3 intersections, adding in a placeholder, raising the SDC rates to cover that placeholder. So for $100 million, maybe we're talking about a $20 million set aside that the city would be collecting through SDCs, and dividing that amongst all the new growth that would develop in the city. So every single-family residence, every commercial development, that unit rate for them would change somewhere between $600 to $1,000 per unit. And I think the City Commission struggled with that idea a little bit. So they've asked us to come back with some comparables. They've asked us to come back with some examples of what the SDCs, how, for instance, a big box store with the current SDCs might compare to the future SDCs. And it's really about a 10% difference. So we're still working through that. We plan to bring back more information at the next public hearing. To me, the decision is if we're going to include these intersections and the problems at these intersections with some kind of solution that would reduce congestion, then we probably need to collect more SDCs to be able to cover that. If we're willing to, if our goal is to keep our transportation SDC at the current rate and live with a little more congestion, then we're asking for that kind of direction from them. So still a fair amount of work. I haven't exactly seen what we're going to be able to bring to the next meeting, which is on June 5th, I think. But I wanted you to be aware of that conversation happening in case you're interested in following it. It's going to continue to ensue.
You're going to bring this to the Planning Commission?
We won't be taking it back to the Planning Commission.
No, I mean these comments that you just made here.
I haven't scheduled that.
Because that has to do with their decisions on whether or not to approve a development, does it not?
Right. So as it stands right now, development would, there's code changes right now that are trying to help implement that transportation system plan, and we're proposing kind of continuing to tweak that to deal with these intersection projects. And depending on where the City Commission goes with that, I think maybe what you're asking me is once we get it adopted and we know those, are we taking it back to the Planning Commission to inform them of what the new code changes are?
Yeah, just to keep them up to date.
Yeah.
But John, you're talking about these three intersections. They are state controlled, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you do get your numbers modified and what have you, you're really talking about updating these, improving these intersections.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, what do you see down the road, how long that would take? Because you're talking about some real big improvements here. What, 5, 10 years maybe?
Well, it would be in our 20-year planning horizon.
20, okay.
And some of it might be driven by development.
Yeah.
So, for instance, if the county were to fully implement their master plan, then we'd be looking at those improvements sooner than if they don't. We don't really know when they're going to implement their full master plan at that site. But yeah, it's really driven on need. Somewhat driven on a lot of it's also driven by funding.
Yeah.
Is there any funding that comes in something like this from the county and Metro?
The county's transportation system plan, if you remember, they presented to the planning. The county came to the Planning Commission to do a presentation. I'm getting my meetings a little bit confused. But the county is not including projects within the city limits in their funded scenario. And really not even in their unfunded scenario, because the planning, their position on that has been that the city is the appropriate place for that planning to happen. I'm a little frustrated with the fact that, they're not, in their funding horizon, they're not, in their expenditure horizon for transportation projects, they don't have city intersections included, even though, there's a lot of county transportation through the city.
The need is there, the funds aren't. That's where it boils down to. If we had the money, we wouldn't have this problem.
Yeah, and bottom line is I think the state, maybe Scott can speak to this a little bit, the state recognizes that we can't build our way out of this. We really can't afford to build our way out of this. But I keep thinking if there's, these projects are expensive. I feel like we need something in our transportation system plan and in our SDC calculations that give us the ability to be at the table when a grant program comes along that would fit.
You know what might be interesting is if anybody knows how the intersection of 217 and I-5 complete transformation came about. And how did that happen? Because it was terrible.
All of these projects, there's a regional transportation plan, and that's the whole region looks at these. So, Metro does a lot of planning with these projects. So, for instance, the Jug Handle project was on the regional the Sunnyside corridor is on the regional transportation plan. The bummer part about our projects is they're not necessarily on the regional list yet, but and what we've heard from the state is that look, there's just higher priorities. We're not likely to see funding go your direction in a long time. But again, we're talking about a 20-year planning horizon. We're talking about a transportation system fund that is well underfunded. And but I also get transportation SDCs have an impact on future development. So we're going to continue to have that discussion.
John, when you say we can't build our way out of this, what are you specifically referring to? We've got to improve our transportation system. Is that building our way out of this to make a better transportation system to improve it? Don't the two conflict, these two statements?
Well, some of these things are like this Willamette, like the 205 situation on the Willamette River. That's going to be tough to make that a priority, I think, with all the other transportation needs around the region, to add additional lanes across the Willamette River on 205. Tough. You can build your way out of it, but it's tough for us to afford to do that. And then sometimes it just puts more load on the next bottleneck. So that's where I'm kind of coming from. I think the approach right now is no different than our transportation system plan. It's trying to move people it's trying to use good land use planning to keep people working close to where they live and shopping close to where they live, getting people on alternate modes of travel. That's more the approach than just trying to add more lanes.
Oh, I see what you're getting at. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Anything else?
Is that good, John?
That's enough. Clackamas River Drive, Washington Street, speed zone study.
Thanks.
I got stuff for Tharp Road.
Well, yeah.
Got a whole bunch of stuff.
We basically asked Eric Wargren to. Where am I at here? This conversation about speed study on Clackamas River Drive was brought up in, I think, the same meeting the Tharp Court group came to, and we went out there and looked at that and recognized that, with the Jug Handle project, there was, we actually think it's posted right now. Whether the Clackamas River Drive is within the 85th percentile, we're not certain about, but through the roundabout, that's all posted 25 miles an hour. There was some inconsistencies, I think, on Washington Street as you come, across by the Amtrak station there and Interpretive Center. So we've recognized that there's some inconsistencies there, but we've left it posted as it is. And Eric Wargren filled out the speed zone request. We're several down the list, so if you remember, our South End plan took a while. I suspect this one will as well. But that's in the packet. You can see the study area that we proposed. Although I noticed Prairie Schooner Way and the piece up by the Stein Oil is shown on this map, and I don't believe that's part of the study area, but I could be wrong. I thought it was just Washington, up through the roundabout and out to Clackamas River Drive. Any
Okay.
questions? That's just an update.
All right. How about Malala Avenue Enhancement Phase 3?
So I was certain that we had included the grant application packet for your review, but we went back and looked through the meeting minutes, and we hadn't provided that for you, so we're providing it now. The main point of this item to be on your agenda is we want to inform you and about an online survey. Right now, it's the public comment period for this grant and this project. There's 4 projects in this active transportation category. And 3 of them are pretty similar in dollar amount. Right? We're asking for the full amount of the Clackamas County allocation of like almost $4.6 million. I think the grant is $4.58 million. $4,588,000, I think, is the Clackamas County allocation. And so we're kind of competing right now with the Clackamas County project that they have, and Happy Valley has a project, and then our project, and then there's one more that Gladstone brought in, which was the a study for the streetcar bridge across Clackamas River. You guys remember? It seemed to me this came before there was some
Did they
discussion.
ever decide whether that's safe or not? It must be safe, huh?
No, that's what the funding was for, to determine if it was safe and if there, how it might be used. So that was a grant application that Metro put together. We didn't send them a letter of support just because we knew it was going to be competing with our project on Malala. So this project is this project that's in your packet is Malala Avenue from Beaver Creek Road to Highway 213. It includes a boulevard enhancement project that would include street lighting, curb alignment changes, new signalization at Gaffney Lane and Claremont, pedestrian activated mid-block crossings. What else? There's a lot of things that it would include. So right now, Metro has their public comment period. They've got a nice online survey that you can get through from our website. So Kathy's done a great job of posting our on our front page this online survey. So we definitely want you to go online, fill out the questionnaire, let them know who you are, why you think that project's important. I don't have a strong sense of how much weight the Metro is going to put on that public feedback, but I think if it comes down to a couple projects that both look good, they are going to look pretty hard at the public comments and look at the volume of public comments. Kathy's put together a flyer that has same thing. We're trying to send it to the property owners that front that project area, and we're also working on an infomercial as well that would help sell it to the Metro councilors that'll be reviewing it, and also there's a county committee that's made up of other city councilors from the other cities that are within the county and staff, and they are also going to be important in the decision to which project should move forward, because they're all big enough. The 3 projects are big enough to where if you pick any one of them, the other ones couldn't be funded.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So information, please check it out. And if you have any questions?
Still, the people won't use the crosswalks.
What's that?
Still, the people won't use the crosswalks. They'll cross anywhere in the middle of the street,
It's unbelievable.
especially up there around.
John, if that were funded, what do you anticipate the building schedule would be? How long do you think something like that
the
would
funding
take?
cycle for that's 2015 through 18. So we do probably the design in 2015. There's a little bit of property acquisition. Probably wouldn't be constructed until the latter part of that. Probably 2017, 2018.
2-year construction period.
Well, I guess I don't know. I haven't really penciled it out that way. I just know that part of the other deal is we've proposed a match of over $2 million. So I'm programming that match in over several years, and so
is that in-house engineering drawings and stuff like that?
We get a consultant to help us through that. Yeah.
John, is there any additional lane or turning capacities that are going to be added to this?
The section looks pretty similar to what we have now, which is a 3-lane section. So I guess north and south and a center turn lane. But I believe at some of those intersections where we have the either the property or the property owner, like for instance along Fred Meyer, I suspect there might be potential for a turn lane, a right turn lane there. I think on the other side of that intersection it's pretty constrained, so I don't see us getting anything there. Claremont, I'm not sure, needs more lane capacity, so there's I think some of that, but it's going to be more about channelizing it, making it more safe. Right now it's just a vast sea of asphalt, and I think that makes it unsafe for both pedestrians and vehicles.
Will there be bus turnouts?
Might be bus turnouts.
That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah. I don't know. TriMet, sometimes they like them, sometimes they don't. And but it definitely helps, to have the turnout for capacity. So
why don't they like them? Because they have to get back into the lane.
Yeah,
it slows down their route times, because then they have to wait for. Whereas they'd prefer just to stop, hold up traffic, and then be able to leave whenever they want.
So none of the buses
they pull right out of those anyway, so it doesn't make any difference.
Actually, TriMet is a co-applicant, or I don't know if it's called co-applicant. I forget what they're called, but they've got some funding commitment in there, small, and project desires out of those projects as well, or is out of that project. It's not multiple projects. You want to do this?
Yeah.
Who did the graphics on this Mole Owl Avenue? That's good stuff. Whoever put that together.
That's our GIS IT GIS group. Chris Dunlop did all these graphics. Yeah.
It conveys a lot of information.
Yeah, it really does.
Okay. So next one, pedestrian crossing 7th Street, JQ.
We just wanted to give you guys an update on this. I know it's been on the radar for a little while. One of the things that was pointed out with some conversations with the neighborhood association is they didn't have any strong opposition to the flashing walking symbols that we're going to deploy at this intersection. They were only asking, could we get them in black to be consistent with the other architectural features that are down there? That wasn't a problem, so we caught the order before it was fully initiated and then had it sent over. We actually took delivery of the products about a week and a half ago, and they're powder coating right now. Most of the fittings and everything is available in either aluminum or black powder coated. So the only thing that needed to be powder coated that we had to send outside from the manufacturer was the post. So we're hoping to have that in next week, is what we were told. And then we're looking at deploying it just sometime in the next 2-3 weeks. We're starting to coordinate with the electrical and getting all that in line.
Good.
If they like the one I saw last week, you'll be able to see that from the top of 7th.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
One thing, we're taking it to the HRB, and I was doing a little research this morning. That our March minutes talk about the motion says the approval of the rapid flashing beacon on the north side of that intersection, which would be the wrong corner.
No, it's the south is what we're planning.
It would be the south.
Yeah.
So the library or the Carnegie's corner, that's the side of the intersection that we're trying to get it to. And so I noticed that, and I was just want to, I guess, just clarify. That's what our plan is. If there's objections to that, you better let me know.
It's the best decision.
I agree.
Because when you come down, you have to stop. Because if you're down there, a car might be sticking out in the pedestrian if they're stopped at the light when it backs up that far. So,
Yeah, that's right.
And as John stated, we are going to the HRB. We've got a couple items that we're going to them next week. So we'll be presenting this to them, make sure we've got concurrence with the HRB next week. Hence why we're all trying to get all the deliveries and everything scheduled based on these approvals that we have to get. And then if, based on the level of acceptance within the community, we've actually budgeted for a few more of these in the next fiscal year for some strategic deployments that we'll identify at later dates. So I'm looking forward to them. Actually, I think they're going to be a good product.
Probably won't be one on Tharp Court, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yet?
Yet.
Give it a year.
Tell me if I have to pause.
All right.
Oregon passenger rail update.
So I don't have a lot to say about this other than there was another community meeting, stakeholder meeting, I guess, and Kathy's provided some of the presentation material that came out of that, I'm guessing. This was Kathy says, what should I do with this? And I said, go find out what's on their website. So there's a lot of good information here. A couple of things are their goals and objectives. There's 7 goals and objectives, or 7 goals, more objectives that they're considering with regard to this project. I think this is a group that's pretty pro passenger rail. So, I don't think they're working in a vacuum necessarily, but I do think that it's a group that I hope in the end recognizes that there might be people that aren't for spending money on passenger rail between Eugene and Vancouver. But it's a good process. I think they're getting as much input as they can and in a reasonable manner so that they can move forward with a little bit more environmental work. And they're pursuing what they were asked to pursue from the governor's office. So it's a good effort.
Now, are we talking high speed or are we just talking
Click-clack.
click-clack?
I think it's reducing
Milk
from,
can.
I mean, high speed, the high speed snobs would say this is not high speed. This is medium speed.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
What-
So the bottom line is high speed rail typically across the world is much faster than what we're going to end up with, I think, in this part. But it'll still be, the idea is to still make it comparable or maybe better than what it would take you to drive between Eugene and Portland.
It's not express. I mean, we're talking go and stop and go and stop. Right?
It's not commuter rail, and it's not high-speed rail. It's somewhere in between.
6 stops between Vancouver.
And we don't have any coal
I think that went
cars
away.
behind
I
us.
think
That's gone. That conversation's gone.
Right. Is that
Sounds
it?
exciting.
And then construction
Construct-
projects.
yeah, right.
Kathy, again, put together some information here. Pearl Street's moving forward. That's winding down. We might be a little bit behind on that one. I'm not sure if we're going to finish it within the contract period. But it's moving forward in a good way. We just awarded the slurry seal project, so that's really Martin's group's going to kind of kick into gear and get people. I thought I heard yesterday that they wanted to start earlier than they usually do.
Yeah, we're going to pick up about 2 weeks ahead of schedule. One of the things that the good weather has really allowed us to do is, for each of these initiatives that we take on annually, there's a lot of prep work that we do beforehand so that we're not coming in and making fresh cuts on newly rehabilitated asphalt. So the good weather has allowed my stormwater division and my water division to come in and make a lot of point repairs that needed to be done ahead of time in preparation for several of these programs, for the slurry program, for our PMUF program. And most of those that we needed to get done prior to these are ahead of schedule, which means everything else gets the opportunity to move slightly up. So,
Just a quick question regarding coming in on new work I see up by Big Dog in the school here.
not new work. It's
That intersection work is several places. Is that warranty work by the contractor, or what's going on there?
correct. We had a contractor last year that had some quality issues that were still under the warranty period. So we enforced the warranty period.
Excellent.
Making the contractor obligated to come back and make in certain repairs. They're supposedly completing the work. Should have been finished today, but the weather that we had this afternoon delayed some of the final hot asphalt work. So that is programmed to be completed by Friday morning. So there's a couple temporary patches, but the large majority of it, probably 90% of the warranty repair work has been completed.
S2 is the same contractor that's doing Pearl Street. Also was the low bidder on the 2013 pavement improvement contract. So they're getting their contracts in order and submittals and things like that in order, and they'll be moving forward. I don't think we've seen a schedule from them yet. And then the Claremont Way water line replacement and road reconstruction. The funding didn't provide enough to allow us to do all of Claremont Way. We need water line improvements along the entire stretch of Claremont Way, from Berta to Leland. So we're going to start the water line work at Berta, and well, I don't know which direction they're going to start from, but it's going to be between Berta and really the park. Mm-hmm. And the pavement work is going to happen from Malala to the park as well. And that should be an interesting project, because it'll be that we're going to be using the cement treated base rehabilitation method. So peel off the asphalt, till in cement into the base, and then grade it and top it and roll it and compact it and pave it. And it's kind of like what we did with Berkeley Hills. And it's a good technique, and they've come a long ways with how they do that. So we're pretty excited about that one. But of course, first all the water line work has to get done, and then they'll go in and reconstruct the street. We're also, I know what I want to mention about Claremont. Mm-hmm. Questions come up about that on our TSP. Claremont is shown to have 2 bike lanes on it. And right now, if you know Claremont, there's bike lanes, but they allow for some parking, some on-street parking. So if I guess you'd be on the north side of Claremont. It's restricted to no parking between the hours of 8 and 6. 6 to 8, I think. 6 to 8 p.m. You're not allowed to park there. But you can park after that. And so it's really it consumes the entire bike lane. On the other side, it's not restricted, so you see some vehicles parked along that area as well. And so we're considering a change there, which would include on-street parking on one side of the street, moving the travel lanes and the bike lanes in a way that we would have bike lane, travel lane, bike lane, parking. And haven't done a lot of public outreach on that yet, so not exactly sure where to go with that, but that's something that we're considering. We're kind of watching the amount of on-street parking usage during the allowable hours, just to kind of see where that's at, and then we'll have to probably connect with the neighborhood to see what their take is on it. But it would be nice to be able to implement what was recommended and adopted or will be adopted in our transportation system plan, which would be dedicated bike lanes.
A quick question, if I might. What is the difference between the pavement improvements and then when you look at the street projects, the rehabilitation? What's the qualitative difference between those two?
Well, I think it depends. I mean, you can have reconstruction in a pavement improvement projects, but and we have some of that. So I think it's just how we named the title of the project, but it doesn't necessarily keep us from doing rehabilitation, or on the rehabilitation project from just doing a standard overlay. But typically, I think a rehabilitation, if we're talking definitions, I think of that as a lot more extensive work. We're digging it out, or we're doing, like I said, this cement treated base treatment. We're dealing with the base, not just the asphalt.
Any chip seal this year?
I believe so.
The
Yeah.
chip sealing's actually scheduled to get
County.
going pretty soon. We're right now just finishing crack sealing. So again, the good weather's allowed us to get a start on it. One of our additional crack sealers that was out for repairs is actually being returned to us next week, which will allow us to finish that a little bit earlier than we planned, with only having one. So we'll be finishing those up probably in the next 4 or 5 weeks tops, I think.
Maybe you ought to mention what Kevin and Matt have done with the city of.
Oh, yeah. We had one of the things that we rely on, being a municipality, regardless of your size. No one's got all the money in the world, so partnerships are a really good opportunity for us to assist one another when we have needs. You see a lot of it in emergency management realms, but you don't see as much of it on just day-to-day operations. But two of my staff members, Kevin Hanks and Matt Pallison, really took the ball and ran with it, and worked out a mutual aid agreement with the city of Gresham that allowed us to utilize their milling machine, which basically allows us to peel off, 3 inches, top 3 inches of asphalt, get a clean layer down there, put down some fresh tack coat, level everything, put in some new asphalt, build it back up, and then just roll it over, and it gives us a good new driving surface, extends the life of that road without having to go to the full reconstruction or rehabilitation that you have to do with some of these other roads. So we were able to finish, and I'm trying to remember the road. Holcomb. We were able to finish 60 tons of asphalt, over 60 tons of asphalt, in a 1-week period on Holcomb Road, which, small organization, working with Gresham, over 60 tons of asphalt is an impressive project to finish in less than a week's worth of work. So we're really moving forward with trying to maintain that relationship. We sent a formal letter from the city manager and from John over to the city of Gresham saying, hey, thanks for the help. It's appreciated. So hopefully next year we'll be able to utilize it again and get another big project out of the way.
But we've been working on Holcomb for a couple of years doing that kind of patchwork, and the idea is to get it ready for a chip seal. So we're going to try and fix all the problems with the pavement, and then come across, I think this year with with the chip seal. And most of you might remember what we did on it on Myers Road, and we also did it on Warner Parrott. And so chip seal goes down, it looks kind of gray for a little while until some of that rock gets knocked down, and then they spray basically a layer of tack coat or emulsified asphalt, and it makes it black, and then they stripe it. So that's what's coming for Holcomb. Along with we're getting that curve ahead sign on Holcomb too, one of the flashing signs.
And that's actually in.
It's in? Yeah. Oh, it's in the
shop.
In the shop, yeah. It's not in.
No, not in the road, no.
So Holcomb's gonna, John, your end of the
Look
world's
a lot
gonna look
different,
better.
huh?
Where is that curve ahead sign going?
At the curb.
On Holcomb, coming down Holcomb.
At the bottom of the hill?
Bottom.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because there is a curve at the top too.
Yeah, it's basically going to be the same location of the existing curve ahead sign, but this one is going to have LED radar activated lights. So as a car is approaching that existing light or sign location, the radar symbol will set off the LED lights, and it'll start going into a modulated flash to kind of just make it stand out that much more.
If you remember, there was a fatality there. Two. Yeah. Well, there's probably been more than two recent ones.
Yeah.
I think that's all we have. And
Okay.
We've got a couple of kudos I'd like to give them.
You do?
Yeah. John, kudos to you guys. The striping on Redland Road and Highway 213 permanent striping is now on.
Mhm.
I don't know if you twisted any arms or not, but it's appreciated.
That would be Eric Wargren, who's working with that contractor to finish that project up. They were out there last night, I noticed, trying to fix the center. I don't know if your critical eye notices it, but there's a problem. There's a problem with the median or the barrier, and so they're trying to get that in order and do other striping and kind of finish up the punch list of things.
Well, you can sure see it's permanent, the way they put that stuff in. And then also, the last couple of Friday mornings that I've gone by KFC downtown, I haven't seen a bus parked there. I don't know if anything has changed or...
I can't take any credit for any of that.
That's too bad.
That's the fates. I'm sorry. I will say though, have you noticed the flower baskets or the planters? Those came out since our last meeting, and I think we're happy with that. And we've also got our landscape contract out. We've done most of the general landscaping throughout the city is out to contract to 3 different vendors, and there's some growing pains, new contractors coming on board, but overall I think we're pleased with the return that we're getting on our investment with that. So,
Quick question about those flower baskets. I hadn't noticed, maybe it's just not visible, irrigation system. You contract for somebody to water them?
the same contractor that we purchased the flower baskets from, we also contract to do daily watering all of the planters and flower baskets. This year we put everything out to quote bid process, and we wound up putting the whole program out to the street and saving $11,000 over our previous expenditures.
Good.
So we're happy with the return on that. Yes.
Will the tree wells on 7th be getting fixed soon?
Tree wells on 7th.
Yeah, the one where my wife was injured. They put in
With the metal grates, or with there's a few.
They were with the bricks.
The bricks.
They
There's a few
sunk in.
brick ones. We finished a work order on that one last Thursday, but I'll have to confirm on that.
Okay.
I'll look into that.
That's down near Maine.
Yep.
Yeah.
My wife tripped and hurt her back, and she's been to physical therapy quite a bit.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Isn't that what
How
happened
can
to
I
you?
guess in L.A. they didn't have grates around their trees on the sidewalks?
Yeah, that's
So this
a
is
problem.
7th and Main where the accident.
Yeah, they put a couple orange cones after I told John about it, but nothing was done.
If I might bring up one other quick question with regard to the Holcomb-Redland Road intersection. When you come down Holcomb and you're going to go straight on Abernathy, you have 3 traffic lights hanging there suspended. One for the left turn and 2 others. And the alignment of the lanes where you stop before you cross Redland to go on to Abernathy there, I mean, they don't line up. And I don't know if you've had people comment about that before, but if it's the first couple times you've gone through the intersection, you don't know exactly whether you should be in the turn lane or the middle lane, if you're looking at the lights, trying to figure out what's going on. So maybe you could just take a look at that. I don't know if you've had any complaints about that, but
I don't recall, but I know what you're talking about.
it's very
I've
odd.
noticed that
It's
too.
very odd.
I think some of it's got to do with just the approach coming down with that hard turn and then trying to get onto Abernathy.
Well, it just seems like they have the space because the cable goes all the way across, and it seems as though the left turn is over the middle straight lane instead of the other, where it ought to be. I don't know if there's a
So
problem.
it's a signal head alignment issue more than the
signal,
lane markings.
Right, the signals as they are suspended don't hang over the appropriate lane.
Okay. That's actually a county intersection, and so we should talk to
Now
Vic
that
Roman,
old man
Joe Merrick and those guys.
has brought it to this old man's attention, he's right. They are misaligned.
They are, yeah. I've seen that. Not quite sure why though.
I don't know. I haven't seen one quite like that before.
Okay. Any future agenda items?
Let's see. Oh,
Because
we don't typically have these meetings in the summer, right? When does that start? What months is it that we don't typically?
July.
July and August. July and
Okay.
August.
So are we still on track for that, or is this group feeling differently about that?
We still
That
need
sounds
to
good.
just work hard
I'm
next
going on
week.
vacation anyway, so
It always says unless necessary, so.
I don't remember. Am I?
I'll be calm.
Okay, so July and August we won't have any.
June 18th.
I got one item down here on 12th Street in Washington. The bike lane ends with a curb extension and then starts up again on the other side of the curb extension. So you force bicyclists out into traffic and then back in again since they put the curb extensions in. You know what I'm talking about?
I know with the curb extensions, I'm just not.
At 12th
visualizing.
Street, there's a crosswalk and all that, but it's striped for bike lane, but it stops and then they have to swerve out into traffic if you're that strong of a person to be able to pedal up the hill. But they're busy trying to change gears right there.
On Washington.
Yeah, Washington and 12th.
On Washington.
And we were actually out there the other day. That's where we did the collar repairs on the lights.
I'd like to see that one curb extension taken out anyway, because if I come up
You
with
just
my pickup,
should
I got to go
switch
into
the
the left turn lane just to make it without going over that curb.
Sign out.
Okay.
Everybody does it. Yeah.
John,
All right. Thank you.
push this button here.
So, any more?